Hey everybody! So we just finished up talking about terrestrial ecosystems, so today we're going to move on to the aquatic biomes. And it's more than simply just lake, river, ocean. There's lots of different types of freshwater and saltwater ecosystems that we're going to look at. Okay, so aquatic biomes are extremely diverse, just like terrestrial biomes. And they're great because they have water, which provides a lot of ecosystem services to humans. We talked about ecosystem services in the last set of notes. So let's look at one of the pros of an aquatic biome. So a pro is that it dissolves nutrients. And this is great because we know that the plants that live in aquatic ecosystems and some of the smaller fish heavily depend on those nutrients and sediments for survival. Now, one of the cons that we see in aquatic biomes is that they can carry pollution very easily. So that pollution can be transported from place to place, unfortunately. All right, so when we look at aquatic biomes, we separate them essentially into freshwater versus marine. Marine being saltwater. Now, we're going to go through and describe each one of these biomes and talk about some of the key characteristics of each one. So let's focus on the freshwater ones first, because those are the easiest ones, honestly. So this first picture right here, so these are the freshwater ones. This is going to be what we call a swamp, a marsh, or a bog. This is a type of wetland, okay? So you can see that there are surface level plants, but the roots are completely submerged in water, so that's why it's called a wetland. So wetlands actually provide a really important ecosystem service to humans because they protect the mainland from flooding. So we're going to write down flood protection and water filtration. So they do a great job of filtering some of the impurities, the pollution, the trash, the waste out of the water. Okay, so we have streams and rivers, lakes and ponds. You guys know what these are. So a stream and a river, let's draw an arrow to this. So these are going to be flowing fresh water. And I'm just going to put H2O because it's shorter. So remember that rivers are responsible for carrying that excess nitrogen and phosphorus and fertilizers to the ocean, which causes eutrophication. Okay. The lakes and ponds, y'all know this. This is standing water. On the next page of notes, we're going to look at the actual different layers within ponds, but for right now, it's standing water. Okay. Now, let's look at the other side of this picture, and these are all going to be our marine or saltwater ecosystems, and there are several. Okay. All right. So the first one we're going to look at are mangrove swamps. These are super cool. So mangroves, if you look at the picture down here, and you can see it much better in your notes. Mangroves are trees where you can see all of the gnarled roots sticking above the surface of the swamp. I mean, obviously the bottoms of the roots are going to be submerged in water 100% of the time, but it creates kind of like this jungle gym of intertwisted roots. Those are mangroves, okay? So with mangrove swamps, we say that the roots are submerged. Mangrove trees also protect the coastline from storm damage and erosion. So when we have hurricanes hit the United States, where there are mangrove swamps, there is less damage from hurricanes because they kind of absorb all of that wind and all of that water to prevent it from reaching the mainland. So, mangrove trees. I just think mangrove trees are really beautiful. They protect coastline from erosion, which is losing soil, which we don't want, from erosion and storm damage. Okay? So, when they protect the coastline from erosion and storm damage, that is going to be considered an ecosystem service. So, on the test, you may get a question asked, what is an ecosystem service provided by mangrove swamps or mangrove forests, protection from storm damage? Okay, so I'm just going to write over here, ecosystem service. All right. Now, the next one are small salt marshes, but they typically are not going to be called that. They're going to be called estuaries. Okay, estuaries. An estuary is where the river, the location where the river dumps into the ocean. So you've got a mixture of fresh water and salt water. And these are known as fish nurseries. So this is where a lot of fish will go to spawn and have their eggs hatched. Okay, so estuaries, we're going to say it's a mixture of fresh and salt water. And since I ran out of room, I'm going to go up here. These are fish nurseries. And you, okay, I'm going to erase that because y'all are not going to be able to tell what that is. There we go. Fish nursery. Okay. All right, the next one we have are intertidal zones. So that is this right here. Intertidal zones are super cool. The animals that live here are extremely durable and what we call hardy because they have to live in extreme conditions. So the intertidal zone basically is underwater some of the day and then in the air the rest of the day because this is where we have the tides coming in and out. So they have to be able to live in conditions with or without water, which is going to also change the temperature. Okay, so the intertidal zone exists between high and low tide. Again, the organisms that live here have been able to live in extremely difficult conditions. So this is where you're going to see things like crabs who can live in varying degrees of water and temperature. All right, the next one we have is the coral reefs. Now, the coral reef is the underwater equivalent of a tropical rainforest. They are the most diverse aquatic ecosystem. And I love this picture because it kind of reminds me of the cereal Fruity Pebbles, if you've ever had that, because it's just so colorful. So, coral reefs, they are found in warm, shallow water. So warm, shallow water. My H2O. Okay. It is the most diverse, as we said. Okay. And it requires what we call DO, which is dissolved oxygen. So we're going to put needs DO, dissolved oxygen. So what dissolved oxygen is little tiny bubbles of oxygen that are dissolved in the water. And the reason this is important is because that's what fish use to breathe. A lot of people think that when fish need the oxygen, yes, they get it in their gills from the water, but how do they actually get the oxygen out of the water? Some people think the fish are able to take that water molecule, H2O, and actually split it, and that does not happen because that would cause an explosion. Fish get oxygen from dissolved oxygen, so little bubbles of oxygen dissolved in the water. Okay. All right. Now, we know, because we talked about the carbon cycle, the coral reefs are especially vulnerable to bleaching. Okay, and we'll talk more about that when we get to climate change. Okay. All right, the last one we have is the open ocean. So that's this one right here. And I sort of wrote all over everything, so I'm just going to draw a squiggly arrow down here. All right, the open ocean. All right, so we know that the ocean can be incredibly deep. We really don't know the deepest part of the ocean. We know that the Mariana Trench is the deepest trench, but we don't really know anything about it. So sunlight can only penetrate so far in the open ocean because you have algae, you have sediments in the water that are then going to start to block that sunlight. So light will only penetrate as deep as sediments allow. Okay. All right, so I am going to scroll here to the next page so that we can look at the different parts of lake structure and the different parts of the ocean. So I'm going to need, I don't know, about 5 minutes to talk about this, so it's going to be more than the time I have remaining, so I'm just going to record a new video. So I'll see you guys in just a second.